Well, welcome back to the One Big Thing. I am your host, Steve Campbell. Great conversation today. I got Zac Woodfin, who is the Director of Sports Performance for the Tennessee Titans. An awesome role for him where he's shaping the life of Titans every day, but also spent some time in the NFL as a linebacker. He's a dad, he's a husband. And so it's fun for me because I think when you can have guests on that are doing incredible things at the forefront and you see them and you can follow their story, that's very exciting. But I think when you get the people that are more behind the scenes shaping those individuals, those are where some of the coolest stories and breakthroughs come through. So today, Zac and I are going to get into his story, but how he has learned over his career how to train elite athletes to become their best and what it looks like when they're in game time, but also off the field and in the off season. But we're also going to get to know him as a person. So to anybody that's here, Champion Zac, welcome to the One Big Thing. This is an interview style show where I have people from all walks of life really speaking to those 30s and 40-year-olds that are navigating marriage, raising kids, and just trying to figure out the season of life that they're in and getting a little bit of hope and inspiration from stories like Zac and individuals making a difference. I, as your host, I have an opportunity to serve, first of all, as a dad and husband. Got 4 kids under 8 years old, so I'm right in the thick of many of my listeners. But I do serve as the chief brand officer at my company and really understand the importance of honoring a brand, honoring individuals. And so it is a pleasure of mine to have people like Zac on to really bring to light their story and to honor them through that. So I've been in business, I've been a dad, I get it. Fitness, health is a huge part of my life. So it'll be fun to talk, in Zac's world, what he's gone through, but you folks are in for a treat today. So, Zac, for those who may not know you, we know the Tennessee Titans, but maybe we've never heard of Zac Woodfin. Is there anything you can start as high level as you want, but why don't you tell us kind of who you are and what you're working on?
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, first of all, Steve, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to chat today with you and just share some things about my life and my career that I truly think will help anybody who listens. So, really about me, I was born in a small town in Alabama, Prattville, Alabama, which, you know, any small town in the South, typically sports, kind of high school sports dominate the town and everything. And so Prattville was very similar with Friday night football. And that's the sport that I grew to love. I was a multi-sport athlete really until high school, but stuck with football in high school and played at Prattville High. I was a linebacker, and then I played at UAB, Alabama, Birmingham, and from there, multiple stops in the NFL and NFL Europe. And shortly after my career, which was brief, off and on for about 2.5 years in the NFL, I got into coaching. But really, my life and my story has weaved in and out of sports, whether it be playing or coaching, and the lessons that I've been able to learn through what athletics gives have been amazing. Faith is also a big part of my life, and so um, uh, using all of the things that I've learned through my faith and really trying to apply that to my life has helped me through a lot of hardships and adversities. And we'll talk a little bit about those, in the show today. But really, as I think about uh, your show, the one big thing is it really comes down to how I've dealt with a lot of the adversities, and I want to share some of those applications with the listeners today.
Yeah, I love that. And you are my second NFL alum to be on the show. If you guys are new to the show, I had Christian Ponder on a series of episodes ago. Christian was the 12th overall pick in the NFL draft, played for the Minnesota Vikings. And fascinating story, kind of hearing his background of being really an isolated kid, didn't really like the spotlight, and then was thrust of being all over billboards all over Minnesota. And just to like, how do you deal with that when you're the alpha quarterback of an NFL team, but yet inwardly you don't want anybody to know who you are? Fascinating take. I think what's
Mm,
cool is with having you've had experience in the NFL, but Christian went on to start the Post, which is a business networking group in New York City to really help athletes post their career still stay connected and to have that team. And so he's doing amazing things. But I think what's cool with your story is you had time in both the NFL and NFL Europe, but now working as a sports performance, strength and conditioning, helping train athletes. That transition is very cool because of the work you're doing behind the scenes, probably leaning on what you've learned at UAB and over the years. And you've had other stints, I saw over the years at the collegiate level, in the NFL years ago, working for other, franchises. And so what a cool opportunity, to not only be a player, but to now be the one that's helping shape the future of the NFL and the current players. And if I'm recalling it correctly, this opportunity with the Tennessee Titans is fairly new. When did you get hired, and kind of what was that process like? Because I love how systems work. I love the big picture of things.
Hmm.
When you're like, how did you, one, get to know about the opportunity with the Titans? And then two, what in the world is an interview process like as a performance potential coach? Like, do they want to see your plans? Like, what? Talk us through, how did you get connected with the Titans, and then what was that hiring process like for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been with our organization for a few months now. Was hired in February. So really how it came to be, two ways. Number one, our president of football operations, a guy named Chad Brinker, we were together in Green Bay. So I was an assistant strength and conditioning coach for the Packers in 2011, 12, and 13. And so Chad and I formed a relationship there. And so when he came to Tennessee, I think 2 years ago, I knew about it, but um, I pretty much just reached out to him via text and was checking in on him, and I knew they had an opportunity, but that's not really how it happened. I was just calling Chad as a friend, and really like a lot of jobs happen. It's not necessarily um, who it's two or three connections deep. And so I think when it came down to me getting an opportunity to interview, it was our head coach asked some people that he trusted and respected, and those people um, gave him my name, and then I think a few other people in the organization here may have done the same thing. So I think when my name came up several times, it was we should kick the tires on this guy, and so that's how it happened. I got a call from Brian and asked me to interview, and the process of the interview, they're always different. I think in organizations, but the way this one went down is really I was brought in front of 10, maybe 12 members of our organization, and I had a book with my system and my philosophy, and I also had it on, a digital version, and they wanted to go digital, so it was essentially going through my philosophy, how I would do everything, and I tried to be extremely detailed in
Hmm.
my belief system and how I would do, uh, from our training to our nutrition to our recovery to our sports science to our speed development, conversations about who I thought would be great as assistants. And so it was about an hour, maybe hour and a half of me going through and obviously stopping, answering questions, during the presentation if people had, areas they wanted to take a deep dive into. But at the end of the day, it was just me being myself and talking about, what I love to do, which is serve athletes, impact them, in ways, really performance, but ultimately to serve them and help them become better, just what you said earlier on the show, better dads, better husbands, just better people in general, and using performance and the things that we do here, to help our athletes have career longevity and career productivity, to do that. And so that's really how it all kind of went down, and um, it was a awesome experience for me, um, to do that and to be in front of so many, you know, great, professionals that have had tons of time in the NFL, and it ended up working out, that I got the job, and been here, for a few months, just every day trying to help our organization push forward.
Let's take a quick break to hear a word from your sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Seed Planning Group. If you're looking for a life-giving experience working with a financial planner, then Seed is here for you. Seed is a fee-only financial planning firm with a fiduciary obligation to put your best interests first. If your goal is financial freedom and independence without sales, products, or really glorified salespeople, then check out Seed Planning Group today. You can visit www.seedpg.com. That's www.seedpg.com. And the best part, you can schedule a free consultation to find out if their fee-only planners and their process are right for you. Yeah, so I think it's pretty neat that you spent some time in Green Bay. I mean, I know you've been there since February. I think we sometimes, as fans of sports, even for me, when Christian signed on to do the podcast, I just had this like moment where I was like, "Yeah, "That's pretty cool." Like I get to talk to Christian Ponder. Has there been a moment for you at all, though? I know with the Titans, you'd spent some time with Green Bay, so you've been around. You were in the NFL yourself, but is there any just like moments that like sometimes you can never prepare yourself that are just amazing? Like being in facilities, seeing individuals. Do you even have moments like that where you're like, This is pretty wild."
You know, I don't know that I have moments like in awe of people, but I definitely I try to have gratitude every single day, to come into this space. I understand how hard these these roles are to get, and how few of these opportunities there are out there. And so, while I'm not in awe of the people, I am very thankful for the opportunity. And every day that I come in to work, I'm thankful for the place that I get to work at, and all the benefits that come with a job like this. Being around unbelievable coaches and athletes, but just being to work in the National Football League is it's a great opportunity that I try not to ever take for granted.
Well, and what's that process like, Zach? You nail an interview, like you said. It sounded like you were prepared. You had years of, experience, other stopping grounds that probably built up, this playbook for how to shape athletes. So you had all these stops along the way that have prepared you. But as a family man, even if you feel like, man, I nailed that interview, and you get offered the opportunity with the Titans, what's the decision making system like for you and your family? Because I would imagine it involves a relocation potentially, or just a change in life, and you got kids. Like some of us, that aren't in the NFL, you maybe take a job across town, or even, since COVID, life has opened up, expanded quite a bit, where there's people working remotely for companies across the country, relocating. So like we think about in our terms, like you might make a move every once in a while, with your family to seize kind of a destiny in front of you. But with you, with all the stops you've had in Green Bay, now with the Titans, your past experiences at the collegiate level, did that always involve moving to the new location? And then like what is that like when you're leading a family and you know the opportunity in front of you, but you also realize kind of like the roots you're starting to build in a community? Is there any like tug and pull when you're praying about things and thinking about you don't want to miss this opportunity, but also like, is this right for our family? So talk to me about what was that? Was it a hard decision for you when you were offered the job, or like what kind of conversations did you have with the family?
Yeah, I think anytime you have kids that are above the ages of 6, 7, 8 years old, moving is going to be hard, right? Because they've probably established friendships,
Yep.
and they've got some sort of comfort level with wherever you're at. And so moving is never easy. My wife and I have moved 12 times since we've been married. Our kids were a part of a lot of those moves as well. But ultimately, what the moves come down to are, and I've had to learn this, and I've really tried to live my life in this way, is I've never really actively like just tried to get any job that I've had. I've
Mhm.
never like just beat the phones down. Hey, I've never like blasted tons and tons of, emails. Not saying that's wrong.
Right.
I've just never done it. And so, anytime opportunity has come to me, it's been in the middle of me just trying to focus on what I'm currently doing really, really
Hmm.
well. And that's what I tell young coaches and anybody that wants to try to advance is uh, ultimately the way to advance is to not try to advance, but try to be so good at where you are that everybody takes notice. And when other people may ask, hey, Steve, I'm looking for a strength and conditioning coach. Do you know anybody? Well, all I know is the guy that works here is just absolutely doing everything he can to be the best he can. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And
Yep.
that's, to me, that's how you do it. So I've really tried to live my life that way, and my profession is just being where my feet are, not focusing on the next thing, but focusing on the present thing, impacting the people that God has put right in front of me. And so, to get back to your exact question, when this job came about, I was working for the United Football League. I was right in the middle of training camp in Dallas, Texas. Absolutely just in the thick of it. It was a startup league. It was year three. I was in the USFL for year one, year two, and then we merged with the XFL in year three to form the UFL. So it was the third year, and it was so much to be done, and we didn't have big staff, and so I was right in the middle of it when this opportunity to interview came about. And so not only the way that the interview came about, but some things during the interview, some things leading up to the interview. Ultimately, being a person of faith, all I've ever wanted was to make sure I was following God's plan for my life and my family's life.
Yep.
And when people always ask me, "Hey, Zach, what's your goal? Do you have a goal to do this? Where do you want to go?" And I essentially say, you know what, I don't have a place or a team or a city that's my goal. My goal is to follow God's plan and not to go left when He's saying, Zach, go right. And so the way that I knew this was right is because of all of these things that happened to get the interview, during the interview, after the interview. Um, I don't believe in coincidence.
Mm-mm.
God does things for a reason, and I've
Yep.
lived enough life by now to know, like, when God is like opening a door wide and just like saying, go here, Zach, go here, go here, go here. And um I knew this was the case. And as hard as it was for me to tell my kids we're going to Nashville, because I know that, I mean, they were thriving in Birmingham, Alabama. That's where we moved from. I knew this was where God wanted our family to be, because of the opportunity that was opened wide for me here. And if God calls me as the father and the leader of the family, that means He calls all of us.
Hmm.
He's not gonna just call me without Fawn, my wife, Valor, my son, and Violet, my daughter, in mind. And so he's got unbelievable opportunity for all of us here. But sometimes you have to just trust, and you have to go in blind faith that, like, all right, I know this is right. I'm going to leave all of this that I like, love, because I know there's something better. And so
Hmm.
the majority of my opportunities have been very similar. Early in my career, I tried to do a couple of things my way. I tried to go left when, my wife and maybe like my spirit was saying, don't do that. But
Yep.
it didn't take long for me to learn how to listen and how to have faith. And if I would commit to that, I would have a much easier, a much more successful and prosperous life.
Hmm.
Um, because I do believe that if we, try to walk with God and follow His will, it's a lot better outcome than if we just do what we want to do.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. I gotta imagine though, it's easier for Dad when he says we're moving to Nashville because kids get to tighten up and hopefully go to Titans games, and it's like very cool for you because you're around sports all the time. So maybe it's a little easier that kids get to be a part of something big. For many of us that take a job at the next, tech company or at the next hospital, there's no like swag bag that our kids are going to get
Yeah.
excited about. But I think when Dad brings home some Titans gear, it's got a little bit of a feel. But there was so much, Zach, in what you just said that, again, faith is the biggest part of my life. My story is very similar to you. I've never had to actively apply for a job in the sense that going to a website, finding a job. I've always just been right place, right time, not always knowing where I was going. And sometimes the open doors came at the weirdest places that had nothing to do with where you would think I was supposed to be. And it was just a divine connection, a divine opportunity that I didn't force. And there was a season of my life where, again, growing up in church, I understood the Bible. I understood that God wants to be intimately involved in my life, that I would sometimes force things that I thought were good and that were a part of the plan in a way that God never intended. And in my 20s, I ended up trying to, from a right heart, pursue the things of God, but yet my actions and things I was doing was not, displaying trust. And I think for many people, whether you're a person of faith or not, and you're listening to this conversation, I think one of the hardest things navigating a life of faith is finding the balance between when am I using my emotions as a counterfeit to this is God asking me to do something, when it's my own desires, it's my own feelings, versus like just true abandonment and trust. Lord, I don't know why you're putting this on my heart. This doesn't seem to be for me. This on paper makes no sense. Financially, this doesn't make sense. Opportunities wise, this doesn't make sense, but I'll say yes. And my experience has been in my life is that God has never showed me the entire picture. Steve, I'm going to call you to go here, and then this is what I'm going to do. And then once you do that, this is then what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to put you over here. It's not that. For those that don't know my story, my wife and I 3 years ago now moved out of upstate New York after spending 34 years of my life growing up in upstate New York. I thought that that's where I was going to be. I thought that that's where I was going to raise my kids. My two older brothers are there. One of our business locations is there. And I got to give a huge shout out to one of my colleagues, Jeff Chase, who's a massive Tennessee Titans fan. So, Zach,
Hmm.
when I told him you and I were talking today, he was like, oh, man, it's so cool you get these opportunities. So, Jeff Chase, I love you, man. But I grew up in upstate New York. And then in 2020, COVID happened, and none of us could have ever foreseen a worldwide pandemic, kind of getting into all of us, getting the best of us. When we started January of that year, the New Year's goal was not to leave New York. That wasn't a part of the plan. But then COVID happened. And in New York, a little bit different from Tennessee, I don't know how Alabama was. New York was shut down for 10 or 11 months quarantine. Now that I live here in East Tennessee and I hear what COVID was like for people here, they're like, man, we were shut down for 2 weekends. And I'm like, well, I would have taken that. I had 10 months. I had 10 months of playgrounds being covered in murder caution tape and trying to explain to my four young kids in the van, like why we couldn't go to that park, which no one was at, why we couldn't go to ball fields, why we couldn't go to stores. And when you start working from home and you start feeling this pull, one night, my wife and I, just a normal night, we decided to put on a sermon, laying in bed. Our kids were asleep. We put it on, and it was this story. And at the end, the speaker said, what has God put in your hands that you need to give to him? And we just kind of looked at each other and, natural application said our kids. Our kids is what God has given us to change the world. And when we went to bed, I woke up that next morning and I'll never forget. I'm at the sink doing dishes. I'm the first one up in my home. I get up before the kids and my wife get up. It's my quiet time. I'm doing dishes. And I feel this like strange pull on my heart that says, sell your house. Like random. Like, not something you would normally think of. It wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't a strategic financial move. It was just this overwhelming, not from me word, sell your house. And like, kind of one of those things, like I couldn't shake it. And I was like, that's so weird. Like, why would we do that? My wife woke up, we put the kids in the stroller, we're walking down the street, and I was like, honey, I don't know like how to bring this up. This is kind of weird. I'm still navigating this. This happened a half hour ago. I just really feel like God's called us to sell our house. And she goes, great, let's do it. And
Mm,
Zach, just we celebrated in 2024, 11 years of marriage. This was a few years ago. I'm not going to say my wife and I, for the first 8, 9 years of our marriage, did not really make decisions together. But it was a lot of like me saying, hey, this is what I feel like we should do. And her just, following my lead and saying, great, but not really praying herself or feeling like I'm on the same page, just like, hey, I trust you. This was the
mm,
first time in 2020 where her yes resonated with what was on my heart. And then all of a sudden, folks, we didn't turn around that day and put a for sale sign up. But because we were in union together in agreement, and I think this kind of translates to your story, you're making decisions and it has to be on both of you and your kids, and it's got to be a family decision. Everything from that moment on completely changed the trajectory of my future, my kids' future. I am now in East Tennessee. That was never part of the plan. My kids are going to grow up Southern. They're going to marry probably Southern kids.
mm.
Like, this was not the story. And why? Because it wasn't my story. My
Yeah.
story never had this plot twist, but God does. And so I think what's so cool about your situation and what you were saying, and where I want to bring it home to is, a lot of listeners listen to podcasts because they want hope, they want inspiration, but they also want resources. And I think that there's a lot of people that I talk with that are my age that are desperate for change. And I've mentioned this many times on the show. They want so bad for something to come into their life, which can free them from maybe a season that they're in. And so maybe that's for somebody who doesn't love what they're doing right now and they want to make a leap, they want to make a career change. But my cautionary tale, and maybe Zach, this is kind of what you talked about, is don't force something that's not meant for today, but rather fortify what you're currently building. And if we're being very honest and objective when we pray or when we look internally, are there things in my life that I'm not doing with my full heart, that I'm not giving my full attention, that I'm making a lot of excuses for? It's other people, it's situations, it's, things are happening. But if I'm really being honest, is there anything that I can do to be fully present in the season of life I'm in with the work God has given me, that I'm not looking to the next thing? I'm just looking to do the absolute best with what God's given me right now. You don't have to ever force God's dreams on your life. He's got dreams and chess pieces that he's constantly moving. But I think
Hmm.
what your story and what many of my guests have shared is that I think sometimes we think we have to take our future by force, when many times God wants us to fortify what he's already given us. And so I don't know if any of that resonates with you, if you've got anything you want to talk about through that, or if that has been kind of your experience, over making these decisions.
Yeah. I resonate with that completely in my story. As I mentioned in my introduction, it's really been about a series of adversities and how I've dealt with those adversities that have led me to the next step, and how
Mhm.
sometimes setbacks in life, what appear to be setbacks in life, are really setups.
Yep.
God's setting you up for something greater. So the key that I want to um, you know give the listeners is, a lot of times, most of the times in life, my vision, what I wanted to do in life, it did not turn out like what I wanted or what I had hoped, because again, God's plan doesn't always align with our personal plans. But what I really did try to do is when, for example, I grew up in the South. I wanted to play in the Southeastern Conference. I wanted to play in the state of Alabama specifically, so that left going to Alabama or going to Auburn, and I wanted to get a full ride scholarship. Well, those schools didn't offer me a scholarship. I got one offer, and it was from UAB. So right there, that was the first of many. But right there, it's like, all right, my vision, it didn't come into like uh, fruition like I wanted to. God's like, nope, UAB. So I'm like, okay, this is what you want. And exactly what you said, Steve, I went to UAB and I focused on being the best person that I could be in terms of a student athlete. I tried to grow my character. I made a lot of mistakes, but I did actively try to grow and try to become the best that I could be right there. And I ended up making it to the NFL, and maybe now as I look back, if I would have went to one of the bigger schools as a, you know, kind of last man in, I might not have got the opportunity to play as much
Sure.
as I did at UAB. Therefore, I wouldn't have been able to show NFL scouts that, hey, I do have a talent. I do have an ability to play at the next level. And so I think being being a person who's like, wherever I am, I'm going to do the absolute best that I can with the opportunity and the situation that God has me in right now. It may or may not be what I thought I was going to be in, but it's what I'm supposed to be in right now. And I'm going to have character, and I think it comes down to working on your character,
Hmm.
your integrity, your work ethic, your ability to be accountable, to be disciplined, um, and I think God rewards those who he sees like, no, he's doing. He may not love this job right now. This may not be what he always wanted, but he's being diligent in it. He's thankful that he has a job. He's trying to do the best that he can. So okay, I'm going to open this door now. And so my life has been like that over and over again.
Hmm.
What I thought was going to happen, it didn't happen that way. But instead of choosing to be bitter, I chose to be better.
Yeah.
You
Love that.
know, and I think that's the key for our listeners, on the show is that, hey, make those choices when it doesn't exactly go as you had thought. Don't get don't get bitter. Don't get upset. Don't cash it in and say, you know what, you know, I'm not going to do this anymore. This just didn't work out how I wanted, and don't have an attitude issue. Keep your attitude one of gratefulness. Hey, I'm grateful that I even have a opportunity to do something. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful that I live in this country. When you travel abroad, if anybody has that opportunity, especially into Central America and South America, um, Africa, different parts of our world, just being thankful for a shower, being thankful for clean water,
Hmm.
being thankful for the things that so many of us Americans take for granted. It can really help you have that attitude of gratitude, and it
Hmm.
can help you be better at whatever it is that you're doing. So those are the keys, and I line with you for sure on what you said in terms of uh, having perspective.
I think you and I have the same playbook because many of the cliche or statements that you just said, "Don't be bitter, be better." That stuff I first of all tell myself, folks. So it's not
Yeah,
me going around and point my finger at people like, "Hey, be better," but it starts with me, Steve. Why are you responding the way that you are to something your wife said to you? That she's clearly just trying to make you be better, and you're taking it as a personal attack. One thing that, I never know, should I talk about something that's on my heart, but you just said it because you talked about clean water. My wife and I had the opportunity in 2019 to travel to Ghana, Africa. So, Akwabe, to any of my African friends that sometimes tune into the show, to go on a 12-day missions trip. And there was stuff that I saw there that forever broke my heart. The state of situations children were living in that made me think about my own kids stateside. And just there's this overwhelming sense of gratitude that I have. But, for those that may not be familiar with the Bible, there's a story in the Bible that talks about a woman who had to go to the well at certain times of the day because in Jewish culture and tradition, she had had several husbands. And because of the shame and part of the culture, she could not go to the watering well at the same time as the regular, normally married women that follow tradition. And so she had to go in the heat of the day. And what's crazy when you read that story in the Bible is she was going to a shameful place in a way that she probably didn't feel like doing, but knew she had to go draw water. And it was at that exact moment that Jesus came and visited her. And so I wonder how many us in our story are not wanting to go to the well that's before us because the time of day or the situation in our life might not be what everybody else gets to have. But what if that's the exact place where Jesus wants to meet you? And we don't always know when those kind of encounters or opportunities are going to come. But as I thought about your story and I think about listeners, the entire time people talk on this show, I picture people in my head listening to the show. I appreciate you folks for taking the time to listen, but I think about your stories and what you're going through. And man, if I could sit with you for 10 minutes and encourage you to know that your story's not over, that God does have good plans for you, that even if you're in a season of right now where it seems like nothing is going right, he's not forgotten about you. But if he has called you to go to the well at certain times, what if that's the place he wants to meet you at? In your story, if I may be completely off base, Zach, but you can tell me if I'm wrong. I believe you went as an undrafted free agent in the NFL, which means that you were not selected in the NFL draft that year. For us, again, Christian Ponder selected 12th overall, unbelievable first round draft pick, but you didn't get the chance to go to Alabama or Auburn. You went to UAB. What was the experience like for you when the draft came? And I don't know if you had any sense that you could be drafted, but was that a disappointment? Was that hard for you and the thing that you grew up wanting to have your name called by a team? And just to have, for those that aren't familiar with the UDFA, it's an undrafted free agent. So as soon as the NFL draft is over every year and every team has picked the players that they want, there is a pool of players that were not picked, but many of them have draft grades on them. Teams can begin, and you can tell me if this process is wrong. Teams can begin to contact those free agents that were not drafted and offer them contracts. And it basically is a bidding war, an opportunity at that point. You as a player, when you're drafted, you have to go to the team you were picked by. But if you're a UDFA and you get a call from 3 different teams, then you, your agent, whoever, you guys get to figure out where's the best spot for you. So, Zach, what was that experience like for you, having a draft come and go, not hearing your name called? And just talk to me about like what the emotions that went through your head kind of going through that time. Hey everyone, Steve Campbell. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If it's made an impact on you, I would love to take a moment to ask you to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. But I would also love for you to leave a 5-star rating and review. Your ratings and review help other listeners know that this show is worth their time. So thank you so much for tuning into The One Big Thing, and let's enjoy the rest of the episode.
Yeah, it was definitely a time of disappointment, and this is really the following my sports journey. One of the second major, I would say, things that happened that didn't happen like I had envisioned them happening. Right, so like
Yep.
the first one was the UAB instead of Alabama or Auburn. The second one was, yeah, I had a dream to be drafted. I worked extremely hard for this, and a lot of people told me that I was going to be, a late round draft pick. I had an agent, all the things that guys that get drafted had, and the 7 rounds came and went, and no Zac Woodfin was called. Um, so that was a very crushing blow. I'm very grateful that shortly after the draft was over, I did get a call. I got multiple calls, like you said, from teams that wanted to bring me on as an undrafted free agent. I chose the Green Bay Packers. Um, and again, it was like, all right, you can sulk and you can pout and you can, make excuses or blame or complain about all the reasons why you should have been drafted and you weren't, or you can choose to have this mindset of, I have an opportunity. I still have an opportunity. Thank you, Lord, for opening this door to the NFL. I may not have come in the way that I thought I was going to come in as a draft pick, but I'm still coming in. I'm just coming in through the back door instead of through the front, which is like an undrafted guy. It's a long road. It's a hard road. But I was grateful for the opportunity, and I was determined, just like I did at UAB, to focus on improvement every day, to believe in myself despite, a lot of other people maybe not believing in me. I had a good support system. I did have other people that believed in me, my parents and my mentors, and And I believed in myself, at that time, and self-belief and self-confidence was something I had established at my time at UAB. And, um, I had an opportunity to be in camp, and I ended up making the practice squad, but another
Awesome.
setback is I was cut. So before anybody can make the practice squad, they have final roster cut downs to 53 guys, and then they bring the practice squad back. So I wanted to share this story. Being in Tennessee now, I was going to the last preseason game with the Green Bay Packers, and we were playing the Tennessee Titans on the road here in Nashville. I flew into Nashville on the team charter. We were staying somewhere downtown. I get a call. I think we were playing on a Saturday that day. I get a call Friday night in the hotel. It was our general manager. He's like, Zach, come up to the 10th floor. I'm like, Mids, this is weird. What's up with this? Well, he cut me in the hotel. The Packers cut me in the hotel, and he's like, hey, pack your bags. There's going to be a cab. Back in those days, there was no Uber. There's going to be a cab to take you to the airport, and we've got you, Southwest flight going back to Green Bay. So I came into Nashville on a team charter, and I flew out by myself on a Southwest flight to Green Bay that night. I got my car the next morning, and I packed everything I had, and I started driving back down to Alabama, which is where I was from. And I just remember crying and thinking my NFL opportunity was over, and
Mm.
everything I'd worked for was over. And I had made some mistakes with where I placed my identity. I had placed my identity in football, and I remember calling. And my mentor called me. He found out. I must have told him I got let go, and he said, Zach, he's like, football doesn't define you. He said, don't ever allow football to define who you are. He says, your character defines who you are, how you treat other people, how you go about your work, how you are a son, how you are, a friend. Those are the things that define you, and those are things that nobody can ever take away. He said, people can take football away from you or whatever, but they can't take these things that are really you. And it was a turning point in my life, to where I started to put my identity in things that were true and whole, and ultimately put my identity in my faith. But 2 days after that, the Packers called me back for the practice squad. And so I went back with a renewed sense of identity. And I still obviously had a immense passion for the game, but I no longer had this mindset that if I didn't play in the NFL, everything was a waste and I was a failure. No, I wasn't. Like, all the things leading up to that were unbelievable blessings and opportunities, regardless what happens in the NFL. And even if I played, one practice in the NFL, that's, again, it's perspective. That's one more practice than millions and millions and millions and millions of kids who want to do it and they don't ever get to. And and so I wanted to share that story because it's ironic. I'm now in Tennessee, the place where I had a life changing moment, through identity and perspective. But now I'm here, and I remember vividly being, 2005, so almost 20 years ago, um, getting cut in a hotel room in Nashville, and going back to Green Bay by myself, and um, having to figure out, like, football doesn't define me. I'm not going to allow that to happen anymore, and end up having, an opportunity at several more teams, the Ravens and the Texans and NFL Europe. Um, but just a cool story, and again, one of those setbacks that was really a setup for me to become a better man and a better person. And so those were some of the things I was talking about earlier in the show.
Yeah, I heard a sermon story one time that talked about the way that nature works when you plant a seed in the ground. A farmer, an individual will plant a seed with the belief that it will produce the fruit or the plant that's supposed to come from that seed. But for that seed to actually grow, that seed, most people don't realize, once it's buried in the ground, has to suffocate and die, because what's inside the seed has to come out. So once the hard exterior shell is put to death, then what actually is inside that seed now has the opportunity to grow and blossom. And it was basically just pinpointing to the idea that we all have a dream, we all have a vision for our life, we all have seeds that we are planting by faith. But when that seed dies, we don't understand.
Mhm.
We just don't get this wasn't part of the plan. And I want people to understand the weight of the story that you just shared. By no means is my story an NFL story, but my senior year of high school ended up blowing out my ACL in my very last high school state football game.
Mhm.
And I was supposed to sign my scholarship the very next day to play Division I lacrosse at Rutgers University. And I blew my knee out and had never really been injured my entire sports career. So I didn't even realize, this from sports medicine. When you blow out your ACL, your lateral movement is completely gone, but you can still run forward and backwards because of the way your knee works. I continued to play for another quarter and just kept destroying my knee. Every time I went to go plant to make a tackle, my knee would give out and I couldn't understand why. So I ended up having to forego my entire senior basketball season. Didn't get to play with the kids I grew up with. I didn't get to play my senior lacrosse year, which was the sport that I was growing into, because I was rehabbing every day. And so you flash forward to now my time at Rutgers. I had to redshirt my entire freshman year, got mono. It was awful. My playing ability never really came back. And in my sophomore year, which is ironic because when I started the One Big Thing, I actually had my old Division I lacrosse coach on the show, but now we're two men. I was no longer his player in that relationship. We were now two men, two dads talking life. And that was
Mhm.
a really hard season of my life being in college when my athletic ability, my physical ability was not matching internally what I thought I should be doing. And probably one of the lowest moments of my life is Rutgers is about 3 hours from where I grew up as a kid. Where I grew up, we were an hour south of Syracuse, New York, which is a hotbed of lacrosse in upstate New York. Syracuse University has had over the years tons of NCAA men's and women's lacrosse championships. So we had Syracuse on our schedule that year. We took the bus ride for 3 hours from New Jersey, New Brunswick, up to Syracuse, New York. Very familiar with the layout. I had been to football games my entire life there. Family knew that I was going to come. And so they came out to the game to support me. Now, in my lacrosse career, if there was 42 guys on the depth chart, I was number 42. I was the Rudy of my team. My mobility never came back, but coach knew my heart. And so when he would show me the depth chart, my one-on-one meetings with him were not fun. It was him showing me where I was on the depth chart and saying, Campbell, just transfer. Like, go
Mhm.
be a star, go play D3. And man, you want to talk about a gut shot? That's something that no kid wants to hear is like, you're not good enough to play here. You should go play somewhere else, but I stuck it out. So here we are, we're playing Syracuse up at the Carrier Dome in upstate New York. We are getting absolutely blown out. I mean, it's not even close. They went on to win the national championship that year. Type of game that coach starts getting guys off the bench. And you just hear name after name after name. And even though we were losing and no one likes to lose, you could tell the guys on the team were getting excited that these practice guys were getting a chance to go in and play. And name after name after name came except for one. And my family, my extended family was there. Score ends up, sound goes off, and I realized I never got to play. And in my entire college career, I never got to step on the field. This was my one opportunity to do it in a place I grew up with family in the stands. And I was excited for the guys I played with, but I will never forget that ride home on that Greyhound for 3 hours. I sat there and I literally wept as a kid that I
Mhm.
failed, that I wasn't good enough, that coach forgot about me. And now
Mhm.
looking back, having him on my show, I don't hold that against him. But I remember when things get hard that moment. So I want to understand the gravity of what you just said, that the place that you came the night before a preseason game, hopes, aspirations to go play, you get cut and have to fly back by yourself. Dude, that sucks. And I
Mhm.
just think about the people that are out there today that maybe you got passed up for a promotion. Maybe you didn't get the job you thought you were going to get. Maybe you didn't get the pay increase. Or, like you had just said in your story, I think we take for granted that you got to play even one practice in the NFL, which is millions more. My heart really breaks for those that have struggled with infertility. And I had an oldest brother and his wife that went through 11 years of not being able to have a child. I think sometimes as parents, we take for granted that we get to hold our kids in our arms.
Mhm.
And so maybe you can't identify with the NFL and a Zac Woodfin because it's just like whatever. But what are those things in your life right now as a listener that you are taking for granted? That is not a given. Running water, children, money in the bank, I don't care how much it is, food in the fridge. Like are we becoming such consumers that we are wanting God to dial up blessings to fulfill our desires? When in reality, God's like, dude, you've missed it. And you know this when you have kids. Love your kids' names, by the way.
No, thank you.
I know as a dad, man, it hurts when you want to do something fun for your kids and you work hard and you give them something, whether you earned it, you paid for it, you made a craft, you spent time, a drawing, whatever. And they take it and they're just like, I don't want this. Like as a human
Mhm.
dad, like you're just like, dude, like I did that for you. And so I can only think for God who just probably works. He doesn't work because it's not hard for him, but opens doors for us all the time or tries to gently nudge us like, Zach, look what I did. Steve, look what I did. I think what's so
Mhm.
cool about your story, and I want to be super conscious of your time here today. I think it's incredible. The place that caused so much pain, where you got cut, gave birth through that seed to where you are today, back in Nashville,
Mhm.
coaching the Tennessee Titans. So I had kind of one last question for you. Now shifting towards, your role in sports performance and development with players, is there anything from your story that you have a sensitivity towards, other unrestricted free agents, or do you just have like a sensitivity to 1 through 53 or 1 through however many guys on the team? Like, do you see, because of what you've went through, guys as individuals, not just numbers, not just names, but like has what you've gone through really cultivated a heart for players and kind of understanding they have families too and they have dreams? Like,
Mhm.
what has that experience been like through everything you've gone through?
Yeah. So what it's helped me with, and in just my journey is as a coach now, everybody matters.
Hmm.
Everybody matters, from the best to whomever it may be on the practice squad, from the guys that come in here as like a tryout basis, right? We have guys that we bring in after the draft. We have a rookie tryout camp, and there's 30 of them, and how I treat those guys, how I interact with those guys, how I maybe help them believe that, you know what? There's been a lot of tryout guys that have made rosters. You never know. Like, give it your all, leave nothing on the table. Um, and so that's one. Everybody matters. And Zach, treat everybody like they are the best.
Yeah.
Number two, trying as hard as I can to develop trust and respect with guys, building relationship with guys, and having the opportunity to help them with identity. You know, not trying to ever minimize how important the game is to them and how much they should love the game and how much they should, strive to be the best that they can be, but to also have this other side of them of like, you know what, I am somebody without the game, right? Like the game is a really big part of who I am. And if you've made it to this level, it's been a part of who you are for probably the better part of 15 years. If you started when you were 8 years old and you're getting drafted at 22, 23. But even if something were to happen, you get cut, God forbid, you get hurt, you're not a loser, you're not a zero, you're not a failure if you're not in the NFL any longer. Um, and so let's start to understand and just have an identity that is not completely tied to your sport, your job, whatever else that somebody could take from you, right? Like you should never put your identity in something that could be taken from you. You should have full control over your identity. And those things that you have full control over are the character traits that you choose to live by. That's what you're known for. That's what people either respect or not disrespect you for. And those are the things that I want to help build in the athletes that I coach, because it will end. You can have an unbelievable successful career, and you can be 30, and there's something else. And what do you feel when that something else comes? Do you feel proud, or do you feel like, man, without this, I'm nothing? And I
Mhm.
don't want any athlete that I have an opportunity to coach to ever have that feeling like I'm nothing without this game.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great opportunity, Zach, to connect with you. And for those that maybe it's hard to identify with Zach's stories because you've never played professional sports, or, you've never been in the NFL. Think about your own life. Think about the areas that maybe you have formed an identity around. Whether we talked about infertility and not having a child, your identity is not that you're a childless person. That is something that you are going through. Or if you have a kid with special needs, you're not just a special needs parent. Or if you're without a job, you're just unemployed. Like, I think sometimes the enemy is so loud, calling out the things that aren't there, as that's who you are and that's how you're going to be known for. And so, if there's any takeaway from this conversation and what I heard today, it's learning to cultivate a heart of gratefulness every single day. It's learning to, count our blessings, and not in like a weird, overly Christian way, but just like, man, one thing I do is when something happens that, that every day in my life, it's just thank you, Lord, for this. I thank the Lord for my car. I thank you for food. I thank you for just little things. And that cultivation really helps. But also just not just having a heart of gratefulness, but seeing each individual person. And I apologize if you guys can hear my dog. He's going nuts outside. But cultivating a heart that sees each individual person, because I think it's so easy to wonder, God, like, you never use me to speak life to people when there's people in front of you all day long through your workforce, through connections that you have. Like, how can we slow down so much and understand who we are as individuals, that we're made in God's image, made on purpose for a purpose, and that God has good plans for us, and that if we're patient, he'll work out every detail. If that is my foundation, then I don't have to worry about where I need to be or what I have to do. And that's not saying being mindless or not having schedules, but man, how can I learn to show up and be fully present for the people that need me? And even for those perfect strangers that may be praying for, God, where are you? I need you. What if you were the person that God was putting in front of them to speak life and speak hope to them? So Zach, I want to thank you, your family, members of the Titans organization and the NFL, for allowing you to come on today. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to do this with your role in the NFL, but I know that you've made the Titans proud. Hopefully, for your kids and your family members that get a chance to listen to it. And I would just encourage people that know you, don't let this be your last stop on the One Big Thing. I think I've had countless guests that have been military veterans, other NFL players, Peloton instructors, business leaders. In their stories and the thread and the DNA through everything they've been through, what I've realized is even these people that I hold to such high esteem in my mind, musicians that I look up to, when you spend 57 to 60 minutes with an individual, you realize there's not a big difference between this person and me. They're a human being too as well. So for having an interview style show, like, I find that God uses me to speak life to these individuals that many times may not have somebody speaking life to them because their role is so prominent and they're the person out in front. Sometimes the people that are doing the things need somebody to be filling them up. Otherwise, they can run empty. So, Zach, I appreciated our time together. I appreciate all the life lessons, things you've learned. We'll put information in the show notes for anybody that wants more information about anything you're doing. But I just appreciate you trekking with me on this journey. I thought this was a very insightful and uplifting conversation. And hey, kudos to you. And this is what I say to a lot of guests. You didn't allow the things that have happened to you to make you a victim to life, but you have continued to stay the course. You fortified where you're at, and good things have happened the way that they were supposed to, not because you forced them, but because you were faithful what God has given you. So I just want to say thanks for coming on the One Big Thing and for taking this time to connect with me today.
Steve, thank you for having me, man. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.